Feel like you're ready to go from purchasing a piece of land into actually developing a property? Well, in this video, we're going to cover all the steps you have to take to get there. Now, there's a reason why you've heard so many people say real estate is the greatest tool to achieving wealth. It's because when you take property and you actually develop something on it, you create such a significant value add. And if you retain the property and keep it, you're able to generate multi-generational wealth for yourself and for your family. Now, what people don't often realize is it is a tremendous risk. A lot of time and a lot of money gets spent into taking a piece of land and getting it ready to actually begin construction. And so in this video, we're going to cover the 9 steps that will take you from land acquisition to what's called ready to issue, or RTI. All right, so step 1 is due diligence. Before you actually buy the property, if you've identified a piece of land that you want to go after, the question you're going to have to ask yourself is, what is it that I'm planning to do with this land? If your objective is to take a piece of land that already has a home and just demolish the home and build a new home, well, those are usually easy enough. But if what you're trying to do is take a piece of land that, let's say, had a home and instead convert it into an 8 or a 16 or a 20 unit apartment building, that's where the process becomes a little bit more cumbersome, and that's what we're going to jump into. So the first step is reviewing what's called zoning restrictions. What is this property zoned for? What is this land zoned for? What will the city allow zoning changes to be made? Or what types of restrictions do they not allow that will require you to actually take it to the next step and begin what's called the pre-application process? Now, in the pre-application process, if the zoning you're looking for on this piece of land is restricted, it doesn't necessarily mean that the deal is dead. What it actually means is all you need to do is physically go down to the city planner's office, sit across from the clerk, and basically look at them and say, hey, I've got this property, here's the address for it, what is it zoned for, and what I'm trying to do is get it zoned for the following. So let's say you're talking about what's called, at least here in LA, an R1 zoning. I want to get it zoned for an R3 zoning. Is that something that you guys would allow? Generally speaking, they'll give you an indication as to whether or not that's something that they'll entertain. And if you get the green light from them to begin the process, well, then you're going to start going through what's called the entitlement window. But if they tell you there's no chance that this is going to happen, meaning if you're trying to take, let's say, a home and build a retail property on it, well, you just saved yourself a ton of time and a ton of money by making one quick trip to the city planner's office. So now let's jump into step 3, which is design and planning. And this is going to be the part of the step where you're going to need to start engaging some key stakeholders like your architect, potentially a land use attorney, a real estate attorney, engineers, and it really just depends on the project itself and what it is you're trying to get done with it. But a great first place to start is with an architect. Now, a good first step would be just drive around the neighborhood and find a property that looks similar to what it is that you're trying to do. So for example, if you're trying to build a 6-unit apartment building, go around the area and look at buildings that are between 4 and 10 units. And if they have the look and the style that you're looking for, find out who that architect was, because there's a tremendous value in finding an architect that understands the local city, the municipality, the rules, the regulations, because they'll be able to get the job done a lot quicker for you than if you were to go to try to find like a national firm. Now, if you're looking to rezone a property into multifamily, every city is really different on this one. And so what we often see is one of 2 scenarios play out. One is the city will have what's basically a general rule of thumb of how many units you can do on a given acre, or they'll have what's called a form-based code, which is basically a form that you provide a bunch of inputs like height, egress, so on and so forth. Architects will usually be the ones that do this, and they'll put in all these inputs, and it'll basically provide back to them how many units you can actually get on this parcel. Now, as with everything in life, things are negotiable. So if, let's say, your inputs on your form-based code only allowed for you to get 8 units and you're trying to get, some density and you want to maybe build 20 units, there's going to be some rules and regulations that allow for what are called density bonuses. But if you want to take the extra step, you can actually go to the city and file for what's called a variance. Be very careful in doing this though, because oftentimes this is where you're going to spend a lot of time and potentially a lot of money, is it's got to go through planning commission and there's just hoops that you have to jump through. But if you're trying to take, let's say, a 1-acre lot that would normally only allow 10 or 12 units, hypothetically speaking, and get instead 100 units, which is happening sometimes and in some scenarios, the variance request is going to be worthwhile. But if you're just trying to go from like 10 units to maybe 12 units, probably not worth the time and the effort. So now moving on to step 4, which is your application for land use entitlement. So basically here you've got all your ducks in a row with your architects and some of the key stakeholders, and you're ready to begin the filing process with the city to get this piece of land that you're looking to get rezoned through the entitlement process. Now we build in California primarily, so we've got experience with these local markets. Everyone is different, but in California, this is oftentimes a very strenuous, very expensive, and very time-consuming process, because what often happens is you'll submit what it is that you're trying to do to the city, they'll go through their review process, and then they'll provide you feedback. And in LA, we've experienced that this takes 3 or 4 rounds. Now the challenge is they'll take about 45 days to go through the review and provide you feedback. You'll scramble to take the feedback into consideration, make your necessary edits, and resubmit it to the city, only to have them take another 45 days to turn around and get back the next round of comments and feedback to you. And so this thing with three or four rounds of feedback could end up taking months, which is so challenging when it comes to the development cycle. This is why you often hear people say that the value of a property that's entitled is worth so much more than one that isn't, because of the amount of time and money and energy that it takes to actually get you through that entitlement process. So step 5 is community meetings and public hearings. And this step doesn't necessarily apply to everybody. It really depends on the size and the scope of the project, or if the project is deemed in what's called like a sensitive area, where basically the city will allow for the local residents to come out, hear what it is that's being done, and have the ability to share their opinion. And oftentimes, you're generally hearing from people that are objecting to the project, and so you'll want to be prepared to work your way through those objections and explain to the residents as well as the city why the project that you're bringing to the table is of a value add to them. All right, so step 6, and this is the big milestone. You've secured your entitlements. This is a massive, massive milestone in this process, and it effectively takes away the greatest risk when it comes to real estate development, because now your property or your project that you're looking to secure is no longer a question of if you can get it entitled to be able to do, let's say, your multifamily development. It's now a matter of when, because it's giving you the green light to actually move forward with your project. And so now you know that whatever it is that you were trying to do on this land can be done. And now it's just a matter of doing it. This takes us into step 7, which are your working drawings and your permits. So this is where you actually are going to take the original site plans that you went through in the entitlement phase, and you're going to do a deep, deep dive. This is where you get your architectural, your structural, and what are called your MEPs, which are your mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers, to all come together and basically build your property, but 2-dimensionally. So if you think about ever seeing or driving by a construction site, they've got these big tables with these massive blueprints that they're flipping pages through. And those are the working drawings where they're actually building the property on paper. They'll touch on every single little aspect of the building. And this is the part where you have to make sure that all the I's are dotted and all the T's are crossed, because the city will actually hold you accountable to these working drawings when you go and actually build the building. Now, one thing to be mindful about in this situation is a lot of the stakeholders that you work with, whether it be your architect or any of your engineers, they'll adopt templated versions for your working drawings, meaning they'll basically take plans that they did on a different property and apply it to yours and then begin to make the modifications. But a lot of times what happens is they'll forget to change a specific aspect that's customized specifically to your project. So think about the example of an attorney who drafts a contract, and then they have to draft another contract similar to the one that they just did. They'll use the template from a prior one, but they may forget to change the name on this one. And so this is that scenario where if they forget to make a specific change that's identified on your actual property and it gets approved by the city, but then it's not something you plan on building, you're gonna have to file an amendment, and that's a more time-consuming process. And so these are the things that you don't wanna rush to make sure you do it quickly. You want to make sure that you're actually doing it correctly. And sometimes that may mean taking a little bit longer at the forefront, but it's worth it because avoiding an amendment is a time saver on your end. Now, you as the developer are the quarterback in this one. So your architect, your structural, your MEPs, all these stakeholders, they're all working on plans that are specific to their area of the project site. And it's your job to consolidate all of it, because when you go to submit everything to the city, you can't piecemeal it. You have to consolidate everything and actually submit it. So again, you want to make sure that what they did was correct and accurate, specific to your project. Now, in terms of cost, it really varies whether you're doing a single family residence, whether you're doing a multifamily development, how large the multifamily development is. I mean, just as an example, a duplex could run you, $50,000 in this process, but a multifamily building that has a couple hundred units could run you anywhere between $400,000 to $800,000. And so the cost of it really just depends on the size that you're looking at, but you can talk to your architects and you can talk to your team of engineers and get a sense of how much they're going to charge you, and make sure that you're talking to multiple in this process, because you're going to want to get a scope of engagement from them. Okay, so this takes us to step 8 and step 9, which I'll kind of consolidate into 2. And that takes us to plan check and permit issuance and what's called RTI. You've done all the work, you got your project approved by the city, you got all your drawings and all of your MEP and engineering work finished, and you have what's called a ready to issue. And that gets you through what you need to actually break ground and begin construction. Now, we ran through this stuff really quickly, and every step, there's a lot more to it. And so we wanted to just provide you guys with the summary. But hit us up if you guys want us to do a deep dive on any one of these. We're gonna start producing more content like this to help you guys along the path of generating wealth through real estate. Hope you found it helpful, and we'll see you on the next one.